your path, which is the career pathway, that rather than guessing who you might be, it will give you a more of a data-proven guidance as to what you could become, different stages of what you could learn, and what you could earn.
Thanks for tuning in to Global Student Voices. I'm your host, Scott Martin, and you're joining us for part 2 of our conversation with Peter Kim. Peter's the founder of Veribera, and he's the creator of FutureMap. We've been talking a lot about that. This is episode 2. This is the second part. So you're joining our conversation in progress. If you missed the first half, I encourage you to go back and listen to that. But this is a really good conversation with Peter, and you don't want to miss it. Thank you, and welcome to Global Student Voices. What are they, as a counselor, somebody who's seen this with 400 families, what are they putting too much weight in, and what are they underweighing? What are they not putting enough value in?
Too much weight on what other people think still, and not enough weight on their children. I mean, I think that's the simplest way I can put this, and in majority of the cases is what I see. It's also to do with subjects as well, because a lot of the subjects have this some sort of pedestal of looking amazing for other people. You know, like in Korea, you either become a doctor or a lawyer or engineer. You don't have any other choice. If you say you want to become an artist, which is exactly my case actually, I want to become a pianist, but they say no, and you ask, well, mom, dad, what's the reason for this? And they will say, well, have you seen people not being able to make it in the world, as in, you know, living on the streets? And I say, yes, I do see them, and that's what you'll be. It's dramatic and it's wrong, but for some reason, growing up, and I think, you know, in the 1950s, 40s, 50s, and 60s of Korea has been extremely difficult. I mean, you see Korea now as a very well developed, technologically advanced country, but back in our parents' and grandparents' age, you hear stories of people just dying from starvation, and things were really difficult then. And therefore, because they've lived through that, and it's only been a generation difference, you see, it hasn't been many generations of seeing different things. So they think that if you don't become a doctor, you know, you will not find a good job, and therefore, you know, it equates to not earning enough money to live in this very competitive world, right? So subject has been a very, very controversial, especially in Asian families coming to us and say, well, we want to make sure that he's either a dentist or a doctor. And I say, well, can I talk to your children first before we make that decision? Because from what I can see from the report, it says that he's very good at maths and science as well as arts and geography and French and everything else. So why don't I speak to them and say, you know, and actually look at what he's really good at, and other than that, what he's really enjoying doing, as well as what he's good at, before we make a stern decision to what he wants to become. Sometimes family situations, like, as you say, in an environment where I come into the family, I am not really a family member, and therefore all I can give is my best advice according to what I can see and what I have experienced. But sometimes it doesn't work. Still, you know, they say, well, thank you for your input, but we still decide to, even if the students say, you know, I don't want to become that, you know, it's just how it is. But in my opinion, I think that's the best thing that we can do, just to give them a broader guidance and different career paths that they could go into. At least I've done my part. At least I've talked to your children and I've assessed them and talked to them. So that's the real challenge, I think. I'm not here to try to persuade anyone of any families of not going into, you know, making doctors, future doctors, or, you know, dentists or lawyers. But I think sometimes it happens later in the life. You know, it's funny because some of the families that I taught 5 or 6 years ago, they went into that path, that very rigid path of becoming a doctor. And the students have told me, said, well, I don't want to become a doctor. I say, well, talk to your parents, etc. But their parents have forced them to. And 6 years later on, he or she came back to me and said, well, listen, I'm actually doing art now. And I say, well done. You know, I'm really happy for you that you're doing something. And then, you know, I talk to the parents now and they say, well, yeah, they were wrong to force something, because he went into med school. But what happened was that, you know, you can't become that very passionate person if you just don't have the love for them, right? So it will eventually filter out, in my opinion, in the later on in their life. And I don't think that's a bad experience to have either. I mean, they have to, see things firsthand to understand what's really important in their lives. And I think that's okay. But then they could have saved some money, or they could have saved a few years of their lives if they,
Yeah.
went. But I think it's all a learning curve anyway. So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, yeah, you're very gracious. I think this is true that kids are resilient, especially these globally mobile kids who are living in multiple countries. They're very resilient. They can fight through anything we throw at them. But as parents and as counselors, why would we not challenge them in areas where they can grow faster and challenge in their strengths as opposed to challenge their weaknesses? I'm just a huge proponent that we need to identify people's strengths and build them up. You don't want to be treated by a doctor who was forced to be a doctor and who doesn't like being a doctor. Like, that's a terrible doctor. You don't want that doctor. Why would you want your kid to be that doctor? You don't. And we know that.
Exactly.
But we
Yeah.
we don't always do what we know. Unpack for me a little bit about how FutureMap, let's get into FutureMap specifically. Unpack for me a little bit about how FutureMap actually works, kind of how the journey it takes the student on.
Right, okay. It's quite simple actually. So you go to the website and then you sign in, and then you can start a 80 question questionnaire. So you'll fill in. Most of the questions are very easy. It's a bit like a character. I don't know if you know about the MBTI, whole MBTI
Oh, yeah.
personality thing that people do for fun. So it's a bit similar to that, but with this is a bit more education orientated, obviously. So you fill that in, and what happens at the end, it will give you a free overview of what you're good at, what you're not very good at, things you can improve on, and universities that you've picked that has potential. So just to give you a little bit more information about the British university system, is that they can only pick 5 to apply to. For medicine is 5. And the thing about this is then, you have 200 universities and you don't really know which one. I mean, you've heard of the most famous ones like Oxford and Cambridge, but, there are many other very, very good universities in the UK. So the thing is, because you can only pick 5, parents and students have been programmed to only think about 5. But what FutureMap does is actually you can pick however many universities as you want, because it will give you information, detailed information, unique to you based on the questionnaire that you've done, on how that university fits the learning style, the teaching style, research, everything else, and how to go from there, rather than just thinking about the 5, no other choice other than the 5 that's in my head. So I think that's another very, very good feature of FutureMap, I would say, because it lays you down however many universities that you've picked. It lays you down information on those. So yeah, sorry, I kind of went back and forth, but yeah, you do the 80 questionnaire, and then yes, the full versions of the 2 reports that are made, Your Path, which is the career pathway, that rather than guessing who you might be, it will give you a more of a data proven guidance as to what you could become, different stages of what you could learn, and what you could earn as well. Because some of the questions that I get is, if I become geography, if I do geography, what kind of jobs can I have, or what kind of money could I be earning? Obviously, we can't give you a real strict answer on that, because everyone's different. At least based on the data, we can give you some different ideas into what kind of jobs they could go into, and then what kind of money they could have earned. Yeah. And then the offer predict is based on the choices of your universities and based on your grades and what you've done so far. It will give you an accurate prediction as a percentage of the chances of getting into that university. So it will say Imperial College, geography, 76% of getting in. And then it will give you the list of how you can improve your application if Imperial was your first choice.
That's fantastic. What a fantastically helpful tool. And you're expanding now. You've started with the British system. And so for students that are applying to schools in England, this is a no-brainer. But you're also expanding that to a wider range. Tell me a little bit about that. Pardon the interruption. Thanks for listening to this episode of Global Student Voices. We're glad you're here. We try really hard to provide good content for international school leaders, parents, and students. But to know what you want to hear, we need to hear from you. So please reach out and let us know what you'd like to hear next. Now, back to the show.
Yes, so I am currently targeting making the system for the US colleges now. It's nearly complete. So I think in a few weeks' time, I will give you a pilot to play around with. But because, again, from my experience, a lot of the Asian parents, parents' first choice is to go to America rather than the UK. So I felt that if I can build something like this for the UK, then of course I can build it for the US. And so there are different people that I'm working with, people who have experiences in the American counseling, colleges counseling as well. So yes, we are expanding to that. And my goal in the end would be just globally. Someone might want to study in Netherlands. I've had some students who wanted to study Netherlands for whatever reason, and then this tool can provide now whichever country or colleges around the world that you would want to go into. It will give you a more accurate guidance as to how well you could do there.
Yeah. And irregardless of where you're picking in terms of destination, as those things get built out, the initial part of the tool, which helps you identify the career path, is transient. I mean, that's the career path. So then what you
Yes.
do with that career path then is really a separate package of what you want
Mhm.
to explore. So doing FutureMap, regardless of where you think your potential destination is, still has value, right? Yeah.
Yeah, and again, like you said, it's just a tool, it's just a guidance, it's just a better textbook than what the counselors have, basically. And the most important bit, as you've mentioned, highlighted earlier, is that the counselor needs to actually talk to the students and the parents based on that. And I think that's what I wanted to provide, really, is to provide a tool for everyone. Not replacing anyone, to provide a better tool for everyone to have a better understanding of where they could be in the
Yeah,
future.
that's fantastic. Describe for me, if you can, because you've done the counseling now for a long time, for long enough that you've had students that you counseled before FutureMap and now with FutureMap. So describe to me the difference in terms of your interaction with the students and maybe the student story of their success or movement.
I mean, I don't want to sound like, I've predicted anything like a philosopher here, but one of the reasons why I've built FutureMap was this aha moments with students. So a student A comes to me and say, "Listen, I want to study, let's say, politics, right? And this is what I've done. Can you suggest some universities?" Right? And I say A, B, C, D, E. But what the parents would say to me is, well, I've talked to my friends, somewhere in the world and say, oh, but I've heard that Durham is the best university for politics. And I say, well, Durham is very good, but it's not the best. And may I ask why you think it's the best? And it's all just like we talked about, it's incomplete information and a lot of the word of mouth kind of thing where someone says you have to go there because that's where the best people go there. Those aha moments where I say, this is the data. Listen, this is the data. This is a ranking. If you want to see the ranking, this is a ranking of universities. This is how they teach. This is what they do. And this is what the later stages of university may look like. For example, you could do MBA or a PhD or research or anything else. And these are the universities that are better
Yep.
fit than the ones that you've mentioned. And then they will say, well, that's really good. And this is what I really wanted FutureMap to do, which is, provide them with information that is just not coming from me only, because sometimes they don't believe you because they think their friend is better than you at counseling. Yeah, right. And on paper and on real data backed proof, I have more leverage. I have more, convincing argument and say, this is what it shows, and this is what I said, and I think you need to really consider that, and that would be a really good thing for your
Yeah.
children.
Yeah. Need to wrap things up a little bit, but this is such a great conversation. This is definitely a two-parter. For a school leader, a school director or a counselor at a school, how do you work with schools? How can they use, as a school, use FutureMap? How do you see that? Like, what's the dream scenario?
Yeah. So another thing about, well, for now, I'll just focus in the UK's education system, because that's the area that I know. Is that even if you go to the best schools in the UK, your session, your time with your university counselor is limited.
Yeah,
A lot of the time, it's only 20-minute sessions, maybe 2 or 3 times a year, which I think is just not enough, because you talk about, so you can talk about one university for 20 minutes, right?
right.
So it's just not enough. So my idea was that having FutureMap, it will provide both the students, the parents, and the counselors into really maximizing their time, that 20 minutes that they have, into discussing what they really want to discuss, rather than just churning out information and conversing about A, B, and C. So the students know from FutureMap, the data backed, they know what universities or what subjects, and now the counselors know, well, based on what the students have said, well, this is what the best advice I can give you based on the information. In my opinion, currently we have enrolled a number of schools in the UK who are planning to use this in the upcoming academic year, which is in September. And I think their idea is that now they can finally make that 20 minutes very efficient and successful, rather than just talking about this and say, well, next time we'll talk about this, next time we'll talk about that. But then that kind of extends into not really talking about whatever that's the core issue, which is real guidance and advice for the university. So yeah, I think what it does is just, it increases
Yeah,
efficiency.
yeah, it's a fantastic tool. So for our audience, which are mostly international schools, certainly if you have a British curriculum, this is a no-brainer. Like right now, sign up. But if you have any students, regardless of the school curriculum, that are looking at schools in England, or England is one of the choices, this tool will just make it so much more efficient than doing all that random research for the student. For parents, what conversation should they be having? They're listening to this podcast and they're like, oh, this is pretty interesting. Where do they start the conversation at home?
I think it will just, any age, when you or when your children are talking about their future, their jobs. Because, I can't remember. I've always wanted to become a pianist, so I don't know if we had a tool like this, what my parents would have said, or what we could have used it for. But I think because my dream was so clear from a young age, but from my experience, a lot of the students aren't. Even 17, 18-year olds, they don't quite know what they want to do, which is fine. I mean, they're still very young. But I think, using this myself as well, I think it will provide, at least it'll give you an overview of the things that you could do. And I think a lot of the parents as well, most of them are quite clueless, because they are experts in their own field, sure, but they don't know, the whole sectors that are available to them, and therefore same as students as well. So I think having
Yeah.
this, when your child is now questioning about the future, when they are
Yeah.
really considering the importance of grades, which is in the UK, GCSEs is where they start. I think this tool will be a great thing, just to have as a stem, shall I say, to guiding them into what they could do. I mean, you can retake the test. I mean, it's not like a one-time thing, because different ages will have different answers. So, you can retake based on your grades, based on your changes of your personality or your interests, etc., and it will give you new information. So, I think whenever you have questions, rather than just Googling or using AI now, I think this will be a really good tool to and see what you could do and where you could be
Yeah,
going.
I think that's fantastic. We'll leave it at that. That's a fantastic word from Peter. Thank you so much for being on the show, and thank you for
Thank
this
you.
tool. If you're looking for the link, you've heard him talk about it. It will be in wherever you're seeing this. There'll be a link in the description. Please check this out. If you're a school counselor, experiment with this and use it with your kids. I think it's going to be an amazing tool. I'm very excited as it continues to build out, and more students can use it. I know that you're a scientist, so I know it's going to keep getting better and better the more data you have. So thank you for your time and effort in putting this tool together, and thank you for sharing it with the world today.
No, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much, Scott.
I'm so grateful you stayed till the end. This was a great episode, and I hope it was really helpful to you. Again, we'd love to hear your feedback, but we also wanted to make you aware of some of the other ways that you can connect with Global Student Solutions. Global Student Voices is a service of Global Student Solutions. We also provide books and resources like you see behind me, as well as a variety of other services, educational content, and consulting. So we would love to connect with you. And at the very least, if you can follow us and subscribe on our YouTube channel. We also have a membership program coming up, and we'd like you to be the first member. So let us know, get your name on the list, and we'll make sure that you're the first to join the membership community. Thank you, and have a great day.